Learning is a treasure that will follow its owner everywhere. Chinese proverb. I've been to university, and I've got the degree and postgraduate qualification to prove it. So I hope you can take my word for it when I say, if you're sitting there thinking you're not clever because you failed your exams and never went to university, then stop, and stop it now. The truth is, obtaining a university degree is just like passing your driving test. Just as practically everyone can learn to drive, so, too, practically everyone can get a degree. Sure, it's nice to pass the exams and get the piece of paper at the end, but so what? The reason to get a university degree is pretty much the same reason you decide to learn to drive. It offers you greater freedom and more choices. If you can drive, then you have a set of skills you can use to go on long trips in the country, avoid the rain, or just get around more efficiently. With a degree, your mind can take long trips to the country of abstract ideas, you can avoid some of the emotional weather of the mind, and you may get more information to make your decisions. But, just as you can live life quite happily without ever learning to drive, you can live life quite happily without ever setting foot in a university lecture hall or submitting an essay on abstract ideas and theories. There are a lot of people out there with university degrees who have more brains than sense. In any case, one of the things you quickly realize about getting a degree is that, despite it taking up years of your life to achieve, it doesn't make you smarter or more qualified than someone else. Besides which, no one cares what qualifications you have unless it's critical for the work you do. Even employers rarely ask to see your qualifications and often as not give you the job based on your experience and references, rather than the piece of paper you sweated over for months and years at a time trying to obtain. Also, most people with degrees don't end up doing a job which is in any way related to their qualification. And I don't know about you, but the cleverest, brightest and most interesting individuals I've met never went to university, either. While a university education isn't what it's cracked up to be, education in a more general sense is essential for happiness. If we accept a life in prison as a wasted life, and if the majority of people in prison cannot read and write, it suggests there's something important about education for living a productive life. If the education system fails in its duty to teach your nieces and nephews to read and write, then it seems your younger relatives will be socially isolated in a world that assumes all citizens are literate and numerate and can access work and leisure activities. And if they remain unenthusiastic about learning, they could run the risk of living a life which involves time spent in a prison cell. That might sound alarmist, but at the very least, being illiterate puts your nieces and nephews at a disadvantage, especially in an age where computer literacy is becoming an essential part of daily life. Of course, you'd be forgiven for scratching your head and wondering what you can do to help your nieces and nephews enjoy learning new things. Perhaps it's time to watch films like Stand and Deliver, The Knights of Harlem, Dangerous Minds, and The Freedom Writers, which are about real-life teachers. Maybe they can inspire you and illuminate a path forward. Many of the films I've just listed have similar plot lines and a similar lesson to teach. Usually, the films begin with a gifted teacher with a passion for a particular subject coming into a school in a rundown area, and despite some initial reluctance, they eventually inspire apathetic and cynical pupils, teachers and parents, that the students in the school are more able than anyone thinks. Stand and Deliver, The Knights of Harlem, Dangerous Minds and The Freedom Writers are just a few of the films of this type. Sadly, in these films the grim reality of life also intrudes. Not all the students make it to the end of the story. Like starfish stranded on a beach, some of them die. Despite the heartache at the heart of these films, they show us how subjects ranging from maths and chess to creative writing can be used to inspire young people to work for scholarships, to express their feelings and develop strategies to deal with tough situations. Of course, these are Hollywood films, and they have many flaws, but the lesson offered up in these inspirational movies is the same lesson you learn if, like me, you ever do youth work. The lesson is simple. For children to flourish in education, and in life, it's not enough to send them off to school and hope they absorb knowledge like sponges. No, you need to help them discover a passion for learning. And you need to help them develop grit so that like an oyster they use that grit to make a pearl. When the going gets tough, and the distractions of daily life get in the way of studying, learning a skill or achieving a goal, it's grit that'll get them through. More importantly, if you have a skill or piece of knowledge that you can pass on to your nieces and nephews, and they want you to teach them, then you'd be better off doing it because it could be that which ignites that spark, that love of learning in them. If writers such as Josh Kaufman are right, you could help your nieces and nephews learn something interesting very quickly without it taking up much of your time. According to Josh Kaufman, you can learn almost anything in 20 hours. If you'd like to give it a try, it requires engaging in 5 20-minute practice sessions a day for around 2 weeks. One of the 5 daily practice sessions must take place just before you go to bed. Apparently, doing a practice session before you go to bed helps your brain learn better, and I think he said it taps into your subconscious, too. Give it a try, and see how you get on. If you think that seems like a lot of effort, it's worth remembering that Islam, a religion with over 1 billion followers, requires its adherents to pray 5 times a day for their whole life. If they can do that, then you and everyone else you know can practice for 20 minutes 5 times a day, for around 2 weeks, don't you think? Of course, what you choose to learn in that time is entirely up to you. If you decide to skip Josh Kaufman's sage advice, that's your prerogative. Though, before I finish this letter, I'd like you to consider one thing. In many ways, each of us is like the person who's standing on a beach which is covered in hundreds of starfish. The starfish are stranded and will die if they don't make it back into the sea. We can see the person on the beach keeps picking up the starfish and throwing them back into the sea. From a distance, it might be easier to succumb to the futility of it all. With that many starfish on the beach, no one can hope to save them all, can they? But that's not the point, is it? I mean, like you, the person on the beach can make a difference to each and every starfish they save. And just as you can't save every child from being failed by the system, you can make a difference to your nieces and nephews. You can lift them off the beach of misery and into the sea of joy. Of course, if you are going to toss your nieces and nephews into the sea, it may be a good idea to make sure they know how to swim.